Woo! Today, my goodness, if you have clicked on this voluntarily and you weren't just scrolling through and it just came on, you know that we're talking about rage bait today. And, we are in a cultural moment right now where the rage bait is through the roof. Like, you literally cannot escape politics. You cannot escape all the things that are going on out in your life. If you turn on anything, if you turn on the news, if you turn on social media, if you open up an app, if you have a conversation with anybody, you are going to be susceptible to rage bait. But this episode, my design of this and the reason why I decided to do an episode on this, I put together a loose outline. I'm not sure how it's going to come out, but you are going to leave this episode with a little bit of a toolbox. And that toolbox is going to help you and me get through this next stretch of time. That is my intention. So, we are going to break down a little bit of the rage bait and what's going on out there and how do we protect ourselves in a way that is productive, not bury your head in the sand and sing kumbaya and I'm going to shine the world with love and light. No, 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 because that bypasses actual feelings. So let's figure out how do we move forward productively and be in a position to potentially move forward together. But at the same time, we need to protect ourselves. We really do. In this episode, it might make you really mad with some of the things that I'm going to share, or maybe even my own personal experience. This episode may actually help you feel deeply understood and comforted. And beyond all this, I am personally not taking a stance for more division purposefully, but deeper understanding and hopefully finding a way back to each other. So let's talk about rage bait. What is it? So here is the definition that I came across. I found some funny definitions on Urban Dictionary, which is like things are designed to piss you off. And that is true. Rage bait, I'm going to read what AI said, okay? Rage bait is content often found online and on social media that is intentionally designed to provoke anger, outrage, or strong negative emotions in viewers. The primary purpose, this is really important. The primary purpose of rage bait is to increase engagement through likes, shares, comments, and views, as social media algorithms tend to prioritize emotionally charged content. That's really, really important. You see that the technology that we use is far more powerful than anything that we can stand. But we are going to get through this. The last part of this says the manipulative tactic uses people's emotional triggers to gain attention and potentially profit, similar to clickbait, but focused on negativity. So now that we're clear on this, I was listening to somebody who her and her husband, they have different beliefs politically, right? They have different they both fall on two sides of the aisle or opposite sides of the aisle. Both of them were sitting right next to each other, scrolling on their phone. They're looking at the same exact post. And you know what? They both had different comments prioritized. So, you know how you look at it and then it'll kind of give you, sometimes you'll look at the comments and you'll kind of see what's the sentiment? Are people pissed about this? Are they positive about it? People are far less more interested in people that are going, "Yay, great job." They want to hear like, "Well, that's kind of bullshit." Right? And so, but I thought it was so fascinating that the algorithm is going to feed you what is going to be inflammatory, right? They're going to feed you what you either want to see or what they think is going to be emotionally triggering for you. So I think it kind of sets the stage for how we consume our content. But I am chronically online. I wish I could just say, fuck it, I'm uninstalling everything. I'm not going to look at it, and I'm going to churn butter and wear a cloak and what are those things called around your head? A handkerchief? I don't know. And just be with my family and everything is fine and happy. wouldn't that be nice? But that's just not the world we live in. I am also addicted, like it truly is an addiction for me. I mean, I can't even go to the bathroom without my phone in my hand. But I wanted to share something that I discovered. There is a recent study by Ipsos. This is an Ipsos study, and they talked about intellectual humility. What is intellectual humility? Essentially, it is the degree to which you accept the limitations of your cognitive abilities. Essentially, what happens when everybody thinks they are right? I can tell you, I have really incredible taste in music, and I could play you something, and you're like, damn, her music sucks, right? Why am I so convinced that I'm right? It's the same thing as like everyone thinks they've got a good sense of humor, but not everybody's that funny. So, this Ipsos study on intellectual humility, and I want you to really kind of bury and let this concept burrow in your mind because it is going to help you. 69% of participants in this study believe that the average person lives in a bubble on the internet. 69%. What do you think? Do you think that we're all living in our silos? We're all living in our own echo chambers? We are all, just kind of spoon fed what we think and what we believe and how we act and how we should think. And we're not open to anything else. Okay. 69% of people believe others are living in a bubble on the internet, but only 31% of that think of that of ourselves. Think that of ourselves. That's what I meant. So essentially, we think everybody else is a dumbass, but we are the smart ones. So we almost approach things with an overconfidence in our ability to understand the world. And so if we have an opportunity to kind of suspend the thought that the overconfidence of like, well, I've done the research, I've looked at this, all of the data supports what I believe. Maybe, maybe, maybe it's not true. So we can't have a conversation about rage bait in this moment without talking about the unbelievable American tragedy of Charlie Kirk being shot in the neck and assassinated in the open in a peaceful, otherwise peaceful debate at Utah. The shooter is a 22-year-old man, had one single shot and killed Charlie Kirk, who is an American, very prominent, very well respected in his circles, but very controversial political figure, commentator, debater, very, very strong in his Christian faith. And I want to be very clear, in no world is this even remotely acceptable, justified. It is a disgusting and an absolute tragedy that the moment I saw or heard that he had been shot, I knew that our country may not ever be the same. That should have never happened. And what happened afterward, all hell broke loose. All hell broke loose. Again, on the left side of things, Charlie Kirk was a very conservative Christian. I respect the art of a debate. Nobody should have died. Nobody should have died. We do have the First Amendment, which is free speech, right? All that to say, shooter happens. He is on the loose. Nobody knows who he is. And the response on the left, every leader, every liberal Democratic leader flat out condemned the violence. However, some online trolls were celebrating it. We're saying he deserved it. We're saying it serves him right. It serves him right. I don't agree with that, right? But there were a lot of online trolls that were saying he deserved it. On the right, in the Republican conservative community, it was an all out declaration on war from almost every leader, including the divider in chief, Donald Trump. Now, I am no Donald Trump fan at all. I have tried to see are there any redeeming qualities about him. He is a complete, unequivocal piece of shit that I think is awful for our country. And if you don't agree, I fully respect that. You I believe that if that is not your position, you have every right. I fully respect that. I fully respect that. And I honor that you don't believe what I believe. I think he's a complete piece of garbage and bad for our country. I have not seen people peaceful and happy since he has been in office. I have also seen the prices of everything go up. War is happening. But Donald Trump said this is because of the radical left. So he blamed the Charlie Kirk shooting on the radical left, which has emboldened, again, like January 6th, inciting violence, where the words that he speaks as the leader of this country, as somebody that should be a leader to bring us together, is saying, nope, we're going to go after the organizations that fund democratic initiatives. We are taking it all down. And then I start to see online, I start to see people who are conservative wearing their fatigues, getting their guns out, putting together things of like, we are ready. We are ready for war. And meanwhile, what I know to be true is I can't imagine anybody wants to kill people because they don't believe what they believe. I think there are a lot of keyboard warriors out there that are really emboldened, but those keyboard warriors, I imagine if I'm next to them, they probably wouldn't have that same sentiment, right? I do have to say, the governor of Utah, who is a Republican, Spencer Cox, is has been the absolute most magnificent example of true leadership that is stepping up, and truly the only example that I've seen that has stepped up with class, with respect, with humility, promoting unity and sadness. Sadness. And I am so grateful for Governor Cox for doing that and being able to, what do they call it? Like, we want to bring down the temperature, right? Spencer Cox does that. Trump does not do that. He just doesn't. He is working towards an authoritarian rule, and what will potentially break out is utter chaos and blaming entire populations. Now, let's dig deeper on this. And again, I told you, you may get really pissed off, or you may say, go, Allison, I agree. Or you may say, I don't agree, but you're entitled to your own opinion. And we'll get into a little more of my personal experience here. What I have seen is obviously we are in an attention economy. Algorithms favor engagement, clicks, comments, shares over nuance. Outrage is sticky. Outrage is what clickbait and rage bait is really what people are actively going for because it helps amplify their message and their profile. There's also neuropsychology of like outrage triggers dopamine, validation, social reinforcement. I can tell you that when Kirk it had been announced that he had been killed, I had posted on Facebook and I had said, I am so deeply saddened. I'm sad for our country. I'm sad for the people that don't feel safe and that I want safety. I don't want to worry about when I take my kids to school that I'm never going to see them again and that something's going to happen in their school. I want our neighbors to to actively want to be around each other and feel safe around each other. And I also said, I 100% stand by this, is that I am afraid of what Trump is going to do as a result because he is a motherfucking retaliatory president. I mean, it has come to pass, right? Like we're out in war and we're going to take away more rights and freedom of speech and we're going to dox everybody and fire everybody and I'm going to amplify everyone that has gone against me. This is my experience and this is what I see. I don't see unity anywhere. I see only blame and inciting more division, anger, frustration, outrage in support. So I put that. I also believe it is a gun issue. Now, do we have the right to bear arms? Of course we do. That is our Second Amendment. But the challenge is the scale, right? Like the scale to which we own arms. We need a few limits. We need some common sense laws with it. And I do believe, I mean, all the data shows it. I mean, that's not something that is arguable, truly. And I had gotten really attacked for this post that was not blaming anybody or any other than Trump. Not, yeah. I was implying that I was afraid of Trump's retaliation. But I wasn't blaming a group of people. I wasn't making assumptions. I was truly had put together a thoughtful post about how sad I am and how this should have never happened to Charlie Kirk. And I didn't sleep that night. All I could think about was his wife, Erica, and his beautiful daughters, who will now grow up without a father and a husband and a person in this world. There just is no upside. There's just no upside to this at all. And I got really attacked. And I got attacked with people that said that I should be deplatformed, that it was my fault as somebody who leans left. It is my fault. And people like me and my people have all done this even before any person of interest was in custody. We had no idea who it was. And wouldn't you believe that I have gotten so many texts, DMs, people calling me up, people that are conservative Christians, people that and I'm a Christian, right? Like I wouldn't call myself a conservative Christian, but I was raised Christian. But I had people of opposing not opposing. I had people reach out to me in support saying, I completely understand and agree with you. You did not deserve that. It was personal. It wasn't well thought out. And not everybody was attacking, but there were some. And what's interesting about those people is those people were all gaslighting. And that is the mission, right? Like, let me gaslight you and say, well, what about whatever? And say, well, you're the one that did this. Well, I wasn't in Utah. I certainly don't have a gun and wasn't going to be killing, like it makes no sense. It makes no sense. But there's also, if we're digging deeper, so we talked about the attention economy, the neuropsychology around outrage triggering dopamine. But there's also confrontation and conflict momentum, which is what I'm talking about that happened in the comments. My husband was like, why did you put that out there? Is this what you want? And I was like, honey, I have a platform. And I feel like if there is any opportunity to share, not because I want to hear myself talk, but to invite discussion or unity or something, I need to do it because I feel like silence for me feels like complicit unless it's not my lane, right? I'm not going to be arguing about all the constitutional stuff because I don't know the Constitution. Like, I'm not in a place to sit around and debate laws and things I don't know anything about, but I do know what humans are like. And I do know that what I could see, regardless of where you stood, what I could see was deep fear and deep sadness that was masking itself as outright anger and outrage. And all of those feelings are completely valid no matter where you stand. So that confrontation effect is that viewers are drawn to things that actually challenge their beliefs and provoke conflict. And so it was interesting to see that There were some people that I engaged with that kind of attacked me for my post. And I would say, I'm not going to be engaging on this. I'm not going to be gaslit. Here's my response, right? And I was not blaming groups of people or telling them, like, well, you're just in your echo chamber, because that doesn't help anybody. And I found that a lot of people were defending me and kind of pushing back on their things. But it's interesting where we want the confirmation bias, right? And so we want so desperately to be right. We want so desperately to position ourselves to be right. So when I started to look at Charlie Kirk's debates and started to look at how, like, I get it. I get that he wanted to debate people peacefully and bend people to consider a different point of view. And even those people that would come and ask him about racism and DEI and gun rights and all of those things, he was a really, really masterful debater, a master debater. You all know that joke, right? He really was skilled at it. But I didn't agree with how he positioned it and how he would bend it towards moving people towards his view. And so it did seem like there was some wraparound, right? To help people. And again, that's what you do in a debate, right? You're trying to win. You are trying to win and trying to make it make sense. So the other piece of this that I think is really, really important is that the murder of Charlie Kirk is a visceral event. What I mean by that is that you could look online and literally see him get murdered. And earlier, there was a woman that was stabbed to death in public. Like, you're literally seeing murder and violence on TV, on your normal feeds. I personally cannot watch that. I will not watch it. I never saw those 9 minutes and 15 seconds or 8 minutes or 43 seconds of George Floyd's murder. And I know that I might get criticized for that, that I have the privilege to not watch, but I can't unsee it. And I do think it's important that we do our best to maybe look away from that, because seeing somebody killed in real time or near real time, there's no way that there is no emotional impact that happens with that. And it almost feels irresponsible but again, like, people were there, you see it. It feels very real. It feels like a real threat, because it is. It is a real threat. I can't believe this is the America that we live in. I just can't. And what that does is, because of that visceral event, people are literally being radicalized right now. The people you see online that are like normal human beings just going about their day are literally getting radicalized. And I've even had to ask myself, because I think about this stuff constantly. Am I being radicalized? And on one hand, there's a positive point to that if you are radicalized, are you radicalized to actually do something to invite change? Right? That's kind of what the reinvention room has always been about. And that's what this has always been. Like, I want to get to the point where I'm not apathetic. Like, we don't want apathy. We want movement. We want change. We want real change. But because of people getting radicalized right before our very eyes, because they're seeing murder, it's scary as fuck. It invites even more uncertainty and ambiguity to what's happening. And what I found myself, so this past weekend, I went to a festival called Running Man. And Running Man is, they call it like Burning Man for runners. And so I was running a half marathon. The whole thing is in a big, big field, right? But everything is heightened. And I couldn't believe it, but I found myself talking to my husband going, "Should I even go? I'm afraid to go. Like, am I going to be safe? Is somebody going to find out that I lean left?" And these aren't these kind of people. Is somebody going to be some deranged person that is going to open fire on us? Am I safe? Am I safe? And it couldn't be further from the truth, right? Like there were people that were running that had Charlie Kirk written on their back and they were running with a flag and they were running in support of him, and that is perfectly fine. But to feel like to second guess your own safety of being outside your home or being out in an open field feels crazy. This political polarization is just it's been so much, certainly with media and social media and political operatives that are really priming us for this us versus them. And I want to stop the us versus them, which is why I'm really, really careful to not lump people into groups of, well, you're just this, so you're obviously going to believe this. It doesn't do us any good. And I think there is a role of identity and moral framing that goes with all of this. The moral framing piece and the role of identity, I've actually done. There are 2 episodes, I'll put them in the show notes, that I've done. One is where I interviewed David McRaney, and it was how to change people's minds. And it was literally the science behind how do you change people's minds. And the other one is I've done is where I interviewed a professor about social identities and how social death is far greater than actual death when it comes to some of the decisions that we make in terms of the groups from where we belong. So, in many cases, it can be deadly. You can think about the MAHA movement or the anti vax movement, or measles has just been announced in there's been cases in Georgia where I live that just happened in the county that I like it. These are deadly. These are deadly groups that people belong to. Whether they are right or wrong, I don't know. I certainly have my own beliefs, and there is science and data and whatever, and all that stuff is kind of going into a gray area. But this death of Charlie Kirk and all the things that are going on now, it's not just a tragedy, it's symbolic. It's seen as an attack on somebody's values, their identity, their community. And the symbolism makes rage bait more powerful. What I think is interesting is the martyrdom piece. And as it comes to declaring war, where lots of leaders and newscasters were saying this is war, people that are in predominantly, from what I could see, conservative circles very often, and this happens a lot in the Christian communities and fundamentalist Christianity, of the concept of a warrior. We are in a war. We are on fire for Christ. The enemy, this us versus them. The enemy could be Satan. The enemy could be people who don't believe. The enemy can be somebody that is trying to attack our family, our beliefs, our systems, whatever that is. And I just, I think about when I'm angry, and I'm somebody that is quick to anger and slow to almost no crying, because it feels like I have control. And what I saw after the Charlie Kirk assassination is anger, like anger that will rattle your bones and make you do something you would never do as if you were in your sane mind. And anger has been unleashed. And that I think about, this is kind of a dumb it's kind of a dumb analogy, but I think about me when I take a high intensity interval training. I go to a gym called Metabolic. I go a few times a week, and part of it is like we do a punching bag. And I have always used that punching bag where I think about, like, who am I mad at? And it's always Trump. It's never been anybody but Trump. It's never been my husband. It's never been other people. It's always been Trump. But it feels like we're going to get stronger. We're going to get stronger, so we are ready. We are in the battle position. I think the risk of this is that nothing feels safe. We are always on guard. What does it feel like? Like me getting stronger is almost perpetuating that hustle culture. I don't know if I'm conflating or like converging two completely separate things. But when I think about the hustle culture of like, I'm just going to outwork and work as hard as I can and be more focused and more determined and more louder and more stronger because that I can control. And what we are missing is the softness of knowing that we are safe and that we are supported and we are going to be held. When I think about the personal reflection, all I could see is people's deep sadness and confusion and looking for certainty because that anger is really a cover for grief. And it feels so urgent. It feels overwhelming. And I think about over the past, I think in the first time Trump was in office, I really felt unsafe to talk about politics with anybody unless you believed what I believe. And I felt like I was not safe. And then over the years, things have changed where I would be working with people who I just adored. I would become really close friends with people that would completely be in opposition to what I believe. But I knew they love and respected me as a human, and I love and respected them as a human. To me, I feel like live and let live. Although when rights are being taken away, like human rights and healthcare, is hard, right? Like, and we all have different platforms that we may stand on. But I have found that I almost have found, and again, I'm having trouble finding my words, and I hope you will give me some grace for that. But there are people that I have actively become close to where I think I really did judge before, and now it makes perfect sense that if you have, like, let's say you are somebody that is a hardcore Christian MAGA Republican, and you and I are talking. I know that you and I have completely different news cycles, completely. And I also know that you have a completely different set of experiences, social groups, identities that 100% back up what you believe. Same with me. So do I. So, what do we do with that? I think about, I was talking to somebody who, I'm left leaning, and I talked to somebody who is a Republican, and he was talking about, we were talking about, kind of lamenting over not knowing who to trust anymore. All the inflammatory stuff that you see online, the rage baiting. How do you know who to trust? And we were talking about the shooter of Charlie Kirk. And he said, yeah, like he had, his parents were raised Republican, but turns out he went far left. And I was like, excuse me? What did you just say? And he said, yeah, he was like wildly left, like extreme. And I was like, God, that's so weird because my news says he was far, far right as part of this other movement. So who's right? Who the fuck knows? And as far as we know, he was raised in Utah by a Republican family that is still together. It kind of reminds me of adolescence, the movie that just won all the Emmys, the TV series that just won all the Emmys of like, what happens when you shoot somebody, but you come from a really solid family as a result from being radicalized by social media and online and really just the deep sense of loneliness that we have. And so the tension between wanting justice and truth, accountability versus wanting calm and fairness, you kind of have to avoid being manipulated and risk of, I think I would caution the risk of being carried away. Once you engage in blame, and counter blame, and conspiracy, it's really harder to step back and see what's verified and what's rumor. It's hard to balance a lot of this stuff, loyalty to principles, to community, with critical thinking and questioning sources. So, how do we not take the bait and stay more grounded? I think the first is slow down your information. Like, don't react immediately. Let verified facts come in. I know that if you follow accounts that lean one way or the other, and they may come up with something and they'll have it in like a really bold font, you'll just share it right away. You'll just share it right away. Yep, that's me. You are carrying the flag. Think twice first. Slow down the information. I do think it's important to check the source. Is it from a reputable news outlet? Are there multiple independent sources confirming? AP and Reuters and BBC are probably the most middle that you can possibly get. And be mindful of echo chambers. When I think about that conversation I had with that person that was talking about Charlie Kirk shooter being either radical left or radical right, and you have to know that all of this is designed to manipulate you. It is designed to radicalize you. And unless you want to be carried away, it's really important to say, this can't all be true. We don't know what's AI anymore. We don't know what's always the truth. And I would be super careful, really careful, to trust even your own leaders, especially Donald Trump, who is a known liar, a convicted felon. Is he right? I don't know. But I would maybe second guess before taking him and other sources, even if they are Fox News or MSNBC or CNN. They're all opinion pieces designed to provoke and entertain you. Fox News is an entertainment channel. Let's be clear. And they all have become opinion chambers. So, what is known and what isn't known? Who is saying it and why might they want you to believe it? Who is to profit? And what emotion is being appealed to? Is it fear? Is it anger? Is it moral indignation? I am seeing the headlines that are coming in about all the attacks on the radical left and that we're going to dismantle truly every inch of democracy for a new authoritarian culture, is what it sure seems like to me. And you have to not take the bait. And I think the other piece is, it's okay to not look at social media. It's okay to not look at the headlines. Be aware of your triggers. Surround yourself with people who are willing to question and to lean into uncertainty. However, be careful of who those sources are. So you remember I was telling you about my Facebook post that, I got some people attacking me. I was really, to be honest, like the people that were attacking me, they're not people I respected or knew or were really close to. And I imagine if those comments came from somebody in my family, I would be under my bed crying, truly. And so for me, it was easy to unfollow those people. And it wasn't because I wanted to, like get the last word or whatever. It just wasn't productive. And it was blaming groups of people that it isn't a healthy conversation. I don't even think it makes sense to go, well, here are the facts. Well, here are my facts, and those are right. Well, these are my facts. Like, it doesn't even make sense anymore. Like, can we just reach out to the human that is scared and say, I know this is a really hard time right now. What can I do to help? Or, I'm really struggling right now. This is a really hard time. We are all doing the best that we can. We all deeply care about our country and about our families and our safety and our ability to maintain a free country. But doesn't really feel so free right now. And so limit yourself to like one thing to be completely angry about and resist simplifying the good versus evil or us versus them. And recognize that some of these stories have multiple causes and motives are often really, really mixed. And so be careful of the leaders. Again, they may mislead, they overstate, they may manipulate. Ask for evidence, ask for consistent language, evaluate their responses. Do they avoid blame before facts? Do they condemn violence unequivocally? Do they try to cool things or stir them? And use your voice thoughtfully. If speaking, aim for truth first, respect and empathy, and avoid passing or unverified claims, or things that are inflammatory and just framing. All of this rhetoric that's been going on, I mean, I'm just so deeply moved by how deeply we care about our country. And the way that we solve this, I don't know, every single time I've been in a room with people, we agree on most things. We may disagree on the level of importance of certain things, and that is traditional with conservatives. They typically want to lower tax cuts and don't have as much importance put on social issues. I think it's so fascinating to me that the word Christian even has a different meaning. So if people ask me, Allison, are you a Christian? I'm like, yeah, I was raised Christian. No, but are you a Christian? And I'm like, what does that mean? Is that some club? I remember growing up, they would call it born again Christian. I don't know if they still use those terms, but have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? And for me, I feel like I have a very deep and personal relationship with God. But what I see some Christians do and some of the judgment and hate that's been either directed at me or at others for not conducting our lives in a way that they would see fit seems completely antithetical and diametrically opposed to what Jesus would do. But again, I get it. Like you have your own set of beliefs as well and live and let live. But this rhetoric is normalizing blame without responsibility, and we have to do better. I do want to say that there are a couple of things. How do we ground ourselves? Let me wrap this up. We have to be vigilant of our own reactions. I personally have been feeling unbelievably ungrounded and dysregulated and untethered. I feel like I'm coming undone a little bit. But I also know that I have a family that loves me and that I would do anything for, a loving husband and home, and friends that I would hang the moon, that I feel have hung the moon. I have an incredible group of people that I deeply care about and people that I may not agree with politically that I deeply, deeply care for and can't wait to get to know them better. I find it difficult to talk about politics and policy and beliefs on that, but I love hearing about the rest of how what they care about and what's important to them. Maybe at some point, maybe I'll be more evolved where I can, kind of put it out on the line and go toe to toe, but that's not really what I want. I really want the human and I want us to be human. I also have found, I found this YouTube channel that's been helping. And I don't know if you've ever done breath work, which is like this active style of breathing. It's kind of like a meditative, it almost can give you almost a borderline hallucinogenic way. I mean, think about like constricting or restricting your breath and putting a lot of energy into it. So I found this YouTube channel called, I think it's called Breathe by Sandy or Breathe with Sandy. I'll put it in the show notes. And that has been super helpful. Meditation helps too, just something to calm yourself, getting out in nature. Again, I don't know that I have a ton of answers, but I do want to remind ourselves to, if we can focus on the human side of how do we reconnect without, and again, I have seen people saying, I am going to rise up like the warrior and I'm going to flood this world full of love and light. And to me, that just doesn't fly. I mean, I get it, but at the same time, there is an anger and a fear and a sadness and a grief that also cannot be bypassed, which is why I think if you use breath work or tapping or meditation or yoga or scream therapy, you can Google it. Maybe there are places near you that are offering opportunities for you to release in a healthy way. Take it all day, every day. If it is journaling, if it is, whatever it is, that anger must be dealt with. There's also Gestalt therapy. We have a foam bat. It's like a Nerf bat. So it's like hard in the middle, but it's foam on the outside that we have downstairs. And so when one of us gets really, really mad, it's really cute when the kids do it. I'll take them and we'll get the bat and they're allowed to like hit the couch repeatedly and they always end up cracking up because they think it's funny. They're not allowed to hit each other or break things, but they're able to hit. So do what you need to do to tend with the grief and rage. I don't see this gaslighting and this rage baiting ending anytime soon. And so it is really important that we protect ourselves. Cooler heads will eventually prevail, and all you can control is you. So, with that, I'm going to close up. I will say that to switch it to my business, why do I have a podcast? So we can help influence change and influence and connect to you. I'm really grateful for your ears. And if you don't know, I'm a podcast strategist. And if you are feeling like now is the time to platform, to take your ideas and build a platform on it. It doesn't have to be political. This podcast is not political. This episode is. It is. It gives you the latitude to talk about real things that I don't really feel like, need to be bypassed. I think it's something we need to talk about more and have a more of a human forum about it. And so if you have a podcast that you've been dreaming about, or you have one already, but it's kind of stagnant, let's talk. I offer a free clarity call. And what I do is I help people either launch their podcast from start to finish, everything from gear and producing and promoting and growing and monetizing and like finding your unique idea and really narrowing down like what is your lane and how can people connect with you? Or you have a podcast that you're like, something is like, I need to tighten the bolts. Get on a clarity call with me. It's AllisonHair.com/free call. And I'll put everything in the show notes. But I want to thank you for listening. And I want to thank you for your humanity and for supporting me. If this is your first time listening, thank you for listening all the way through. I hope it has made you feel something and given you some ways and permission to either not look at social media or like narrow your capacity, and your focus on it, but also maybe pause and not get caught up and swept up in something that is designed to provoke you and gaslight you because we don't need it. And so we need to band together and be a little more human. So thanks, everybody.